Hello and welcome back to Tobacco Road and Abroad. My name is Gareth Parsons, joined by Aiden Moore. We've got a great episode for you. March Madness has officially started. We started with the first four today, so I'm gonna let you take it away. Let you quickly break down the Carolina game, and we'll kind of hop into our bracket and our logic and stuff like that.
Well, by the time this is released, like, listen, what can I say? I mean, UNC got the job done. We were able to win against San Diego State. Absolutely dominant performance. Threes were raining down everywhere. A little bit sketchy in the first half. Well, the first couple minutes of the game, there were a lot of turnovers that I feel like needed to be uh, flattened out, but it it is just pretty simple. Like UNC was making threes, and San Diego State's like shots just weren't landing. And when San Diego State made twos, UNC responded back with threes tenfold, really making it really separating themselves through the entirety of the first half and going into the second half, just being able to capitalize on big plays, big moments, and just solid execution all around. It was a prove yourself game for UNC, and I think UNC proved that they made a point to be in the tournament. And obviously, there's still going to be haters saying that they don't deserve their spot, but what can you say about that? They're in, and they're continuing, and we're seeing what's going on now, and that's all as that's pretty much as it is right now for UNC, lined up to go up against Ole Miss later today at well, actually, no, tomorrow. By the time this is going to be released, Friday uh, at 4:05, they will be playing Ole Miss. Big game. I'm excited for that, and there's a lot to get into right now. Hopefully, by the time this is getting up, we will be posting uh, by Thursday morning. So hopefully we can get it out by then, and that's kind of the plan right now. We're kind of a little bit in a time crunch right now, so we're trying to get it done.
Yeah, it certainly was a big game, and this is one of those games where it upset a lot of people, mainly SEC fans the entire time. Like ACC is still a mid-major conference. I mean, well, this is what happens when you put up basically the best team in the Mountain West consistently this season against the fifth place team in the ACC, and they absolutely got rocked. So I'm a little tired of the comparisons to the Mountain West because no disrespect to teams like New Mexico, because New Mexico is a team with like story and history and basketball culture, but that's about it when it comes to the Mountain West basketball culture. The ACC people saying essentially the ACC is on par with the Mountain West. We have the most national championships. Actually, sorry, we're tied for the most national championships with the Big East. We have more Final Fours in the Big East and more Elite Eights. So, and six of the Big East eight are UConn. So, granted, I think one of those may have been an American, and when they're in the American, but
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll get right into it. When it comes to our picks, for me and Aiden, it could just be vibes. We may have actual scientific evidence, stats, trends to back it up, but who knows? We'll see. So without further ado, we're going to hop into our bracket, and we will start with the region that has the number one overall seed. We will start with the South region, and the first game being Auburn versus Alabama State. Aiden, I'll let you take it away here.
Well, I gotta say this. I really respect Alabama State being able to get that last second win against St. Francis. But at the end of the day, I do think Auburn is going to take this one. Auburn's just too dominant on all sides of the ball, and they're the number one overall seed for a reason. They're just dominant. Not the best performance in the SEC tournament as I would have liked, but they've just proved themselves time in and time out over and over again. So I got Auburn winning this one and moving on to the round of 32. Gareth, you got any takeaways?
Not really. I mean, I've got Auburn. Yes, they've been slipping as of late, but I don't think they're going to slip up against Alabama State. Alabama State, no disrespect to them, but when it comes to the net rankings, they are one of the lowest ranked teams in the nation. If I'm not mistaken, let me take a look here. Alabama State is 274th in the net. They're 0-3 in quad 1, 0-3 in quad 2, 3-1 in quad 3. And just from there, looking at it, they're also not a very efficient team either. And I know there's been a lot of debate on social media this year. Like there's a lot of like analytics that have gone into March Madness now. There are people that are saying, it's all about pace of play, how fast you play. Others like shout out, I forget, I'm blanking on his name right now. What is his name? It's a guy I follow on TikTok. Well, let me Google this real quick. And his thing is all about Ryan Hammer. He has created a metric which essentially measures teams based on their efficiency versus their tempo. And in my opinion, based on the past couple of years, he's gotten it right. And his whole thing, he picks based on efficiency. And Alabama State is one of the least efficient teams in Division I. They play a little bit faster than average. And by faster, it's how many possessions you get relative to the average. So they average about 65 possessions per game. But in terms of efficiency, they're actually in the negatives. They're not a very efficient team when it comes to, how they play. Efficiency is essentially just making your ability to make baskets versus your ability to be scored on. There's some sort of mathematical matrices that calculates that, but they're not very efficient. Auburn is one of the more efficient teams, so I'm going to give that to them. Moving on, we've got the 8-9 game between Creighton and Louisville. What are your thoughts on this one? I actually really like this matchup, and this is one of the few matchups where I can't decide.
Overall, very good matchup. I mean, just look at like Louisville has remained very solid in ACC play like throughout the season. Really like they clearly picked it up a lot from last year. I really I was surprised like earlier in ACC play and how they were just a force to be reckoned with, and they've pretty much maintained that throughout the entirety of conference play. They were able to secure 2 buys in the ACC tournament, and they're overall very very solid. With players like Terrence Edwards and Chucky Hepburn, just really being able to score and find like good, meaningful ways to score and getting rebounds. I like Louisville a lot. With Creighton, like Big East play, like they were really strong throughout the season, getting wins against Kansas, UConn, and Marquette. I'm really high on this Creighton team. This is going to be a tough matchup in my opinion. Part of my ACC bias wants to lean towards Louisville, but I just think Creighton's like consistent. They've had some slip-ups that I think are a little bit like bad. Like they if I'm not mistaken, they kept it like pretty close with DePaul in the Big East tournament. That was them, correct?
Yeah.
There's some iffy moments there, but I think Creighton's going to get it together, and I got Creighton winning this one. What do you got?
I actually have the opposite in this game. While Creighton was great in Big East play, I think Louisville's kind of a perfect storm for them. Creighton was supposed to be they are really good this year, but Creighton was supposed to be a national title contender before Pop Isaacs went out for the year. Pop Isaacs was one of the best players in college basketball last year. But like I said, Creighton can get some scoring from multiple places, but in my opinion, sometimes Creighton can just kind of get really one-dimensional for me or for my liking. And I think Louisville, they have the ability to spread around, like you mentioned, Chucky Hepburn. And it's Louisville is star-studded. They've reloaded. I mean, obviously, I know Creighton has got Ryan Kalkbrenner, four-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year. He's the first person to do that since Patrick Ewing. Obviously, they've got Stephen Ashworth, one of their better guards. But in my opinion, I just think Louisville's got it here. I know that could just be ACC bias, but I'm also a Big East homer. I think when it comes to teams that are able to play physical, they really struggled. Like, look at both of their games against St. John's. Those haven't actually, sorry. They have beaten St. John's and they've lost St. John's. And then when they were at St. John's and then in the Big East tournament, it's just St. John's kind of made quick work against them. So really on the inside, Kalkbrenner's the only presence. And if Louisville is able to take him out of the game, which I think they will be, Creighton, well, I've said this before, and I know you're probably saying, well, Gareth, Creighton's one of the better teams in America. Like, how come more teams don't know this? Creighton is one of the easier teams to beat, and it starts with being able to get inside. And you're saying, how do you get inside and you've got someone who's like 7'5"? What teams that have been successful against Creighton do is they draw Kalkbrenner away from the basket. They have their center draw Kalkbrenner out towards the top of the free throw line and then have that center either drive on him or they hit a guard cutting in behind Kalkbrenner. So I think Pat Kelsey and this Louisville team have what it takes, and I think they're going to be able to exploit that with kind of not only their bigs' ability to kind of – I wouldn't call their bigs stretch bigs because they're not, but their bigs are fast, they're physical, and they've got fast guards who can cut in behind. So I think Louisville's got – this is a perfect storm for Creighton. I do think it's a really solid game. I think this is the most evenly matched first round game, but I've got Louisville in this one. So – moving on, we've got Michigan and UC San Diego. And Aiden, I think we have the same thinking on this, but I'm going to let you start off.
Yeah. Same thinking over here. I'm calling an upset alert right now. I really like UC San Diego. I like their performance in the Big West Championship. I'm going to steal a little bit from Gareth's notes right now, but I think it's important mentioning. I think UC San Diego's ability to create turnovers is going to be Michigan's undoing. Michigan has a lot of unforced turnovers, and UC San Diego is really able to take the ball away. So I think it's going to be if Michigan doesn't come ready for this game, I see UC San Diego really giving a tough time for them. And it's March. I want to go UC San Diego. I know Michigan has the bigger names. They got the Danny Wolfs. They got the Goldens. They got a lot of different playmakers on their team, but I feel like if they fall to their turnover ways, I think it's going to be a big game for UC San Diego. That's kind of my takeaway, but I don't know what Gareth got. I'm pretty sure we're thinking the same thing on this one.
We indeed are, and for me, it's mainly been the turnovers. It's not necessarily on the season as a whole, so this necessarily won't pop up on any stat sheets you can find pretty quickly on the internet. But in the last 10 games, Michigan's had the most turnovers among any team. And over the season as a whole, UC San Diego has been great at not only forcing turnovers, but turnovers just tend to happen. Even unforced turnovers just tend to happen in their favor. So I think this could be a perfect storm for Michigan. Also, Michigan, yes, they've got the momentum. They're on a little bit of a run. They're kind of on a hot streak. And yes, hot streaks do matter in March. But ultimately, UC San Diego, believe it or not, is actually a really solid team when it comes to efficiency. They've got some of the best defensive. I think they are the most defensively efficient team, which means, for those you don't know, offensive efficiency is how many points per possession you get. Defensive efficiency is essentially how many points per possession you allow. And UC San Diego is one of the best teams when it comes to that. And with Michigan playing fast but also not very efficient, versus UC San Diego, which plays a little slower, but they are efficient. They usually get really good shots. I think I agree with Aiden. I think this is an absolute perfect storm for Michigan here to get knocked out early.
Moving on to Texas A&M versus Yale. I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty split on this one. The only thing that's like for me that sticks out, I feel like I'm becoming a little bit a victim of history. I just keep on thinking about that Yale upset over Auburn, and I'm thinking, is this the time where that happens again? And I don't want to be like someone that just like replicates the like current or just like what I saw in the past and say that's applicable to now. So that's why I'm pretty split on this game. Texas A&M, I feel like, is extremely solid with players like Wade Taylor and Phelps. We just like they've been able to get big wins at important times, like early on in the season, able to take on teams like Purdue and Texas Tech and have solid wins that really hold up against them. Had a little bit of a midseason slide with like Alabama, uh, lost a game against Kentucky and Tennessee in the months of conference play, but really having a solid win in recently in March against Auburn kind of has me a little bit back on the Texas A&M hype train. For this matchup, I got to go with my mind is telling me Texas A&M, but my heart is telling me Yale. I think I have to go with my mind on this one. I got to go with Texas A&M.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. Texas A&M is one of the more defensively sound teams. They are sixth in defensive efficiency, which essentially means they are the sixth best defense. They don't allow a lot of points. They actually allow less than 1 point per possession, which is not very common. There are only 7 other teams that are able to do that. Excuse me, sorry. There's only 10 other teams that are able to do that, and that includes the likes of St. John's and Houston. And I know people would say, oh, you're crazy for putting them on the same level. But statistically speaking, when it comes to defense, they are on the same level of the St. John's, the Houstons, and the Tennessee. So I agree here. Yes, Yale is one of the best three-point shooting teams in the nation. Texas A&M plays a little slower than some teams. And usually on a given year, this happens about once with a high seed and a low seed. A lower seed that's really good at three-point shooting, a higher seed that plays really slowly, like Aiden talked about with this Carolina game, trading threes for twos, not a recipe for success. But I don't think Yale's going to be able to replicate that this year. I think Texas A&M's way too defensively sound. Yes, their offense at times can leave something to be desired, but ultimately I've got Texas A&M here as well.
Moving on to Ole Miss versus UNC. I might be just still a little bit high from that San Diego State win, but I think UNC's got it in them right now. I think usually the 11th seed, like every year, there's a play-in team that has that proves that they want more, and I think UNC wants more this year. I think they're going to go up against Ole Miss team that they're solid, and I like their performance in SEC play at times, but there've been some pretty like big losses that they've had. Really not being able to take care of Auburn. I'm not saying that UNC is as good as Auburn, but Ole Miss is definitely not the peak of SEC play, in my opinion. And I think if Ian Jackson is able to have a game, and RJ Davis, if he's able to replicate his magic that he had against San Diego State, I definitely see a UNC win in the future against Ole Miss.
I'm gonna be inclined to agree. Ole Miss has been up and down. January. They were one of the hottest teams to be talking about in college basketball. They've kind of cooled off since then. Carolina, like you said, if they're able to replicate what they did tonight, I think they won't be able to replicate as much. Like usually when you shoot like this well in one game, you're going to kind of go into a cold game right after it. But we never know. You'll see. I think UNC has the weapons to get it done. Like, if RJ Davis isn't on, because statistically speaking, he likely will have an off night the next game. But with the weapons that UNC has, I think they'll be able to find a way in that game. Just Ole Miss, I feel like, is too inconsistent. You can make the same argument for UNC, but UNC is the hot team right now. I believe Ole Miss lost in the first round of their conference tournament. They might have got one game, so they're not exactly a hot team right now. Carolina has all the momentum here.
Yeah.
So. Next, we've got Iowa State and Lipscomb. Obviously, Iowa State, another one of the trendy teams this year. I know there usually is, statistically speaking, one of those, kind of 13 and 4. Why are we running? Okay, something's wrong here. Oh, that's a 13 and a 4. Okay, this is a 14 and a 3. That's why. Okay. All right, I read that backwards. All right, we've got Iowa State and Lipscomb. For me, I've just got Iowa State here. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It's Iowa State. They're very. I don't know if they're one of the more efficient teams. I'd have to look at my little thing here. Iowa State, when it comes to offensive efficiency, is kind of up there, and they're also one of the most defensively sound teams as well. And I think when you're a great team all around, that just kind of spells doom for teams like these lower seeds that are hoping to make some noise. Out of curiosity, I kind of just want to see where Lipscomb is in terms of this stuff. Yeah, Lipscomb, they're about average when it comes to Division One. They score about 1.1 points per possession. They allow 1 point per possession. So they're about the Division One average. So I'm gonna go with Iowa State here. What about you?
Yeah. I got Iowa State as well. I'm not gonna lie. Hey, this might like get absolutely murdered into a soundbite if I'm wrong, but I just don't know that much about Lipscomb. Like, I look at them and I see like a pretty decent resume. I see they definitely got some shooters on them, but I'm just really unable to capitalize in like their big games that they were given. Not really a impressive game against Kentucky. Really kind of lackluster performance against Arkansas. There's just a lot of questions going in for this Lipscomb team. But I will say this: I am I did see their game against Northern Alabama. They performed very well in that game, and if they're able to replicate some of that magic against them, where they were really solid in the paint and able to spread the ball a lot, like better. If they're able to replicate that, I do think they're going to be giving Iowa State a lot of fits. And I don't think this is a team to tread lightly, but I just think Iowa State's just too sound overall, and they're a pretty hot team. So I got to give it to Iowa State in this one.
Yeah, I'll agree. Moving on, we've got Marquette and New Mexico. Marquette and New Mexico is certainly an interesting matchup. Marquette is actually a fairly interesting team, if you ask me. They're kind of a tale of two ends of the court. Marquette is one of the fastest offenses in college basketball, but on the defensive end, their entire defense is predicated on slowing you down. Some of the best defenses of today right now are about forcing you to take a quick, off-balance shot, forcing you into taking a contested look that's not as good as you think it is, kind of like almost tricking you into taking a bad shot. That's not Marquette. Marquette's whole game on defense is to slow you down, force you to contemplate things, really force you to kind of work the ball around. And I think that can pose kind of a tricky curveball for teams. Obviously, Patino Jr., does what he does best. But Marquette's another one of those teams that forces a lot of turnovers. Stevie Mitchell is one of the best defenders in the country. Marquette is also one of the teams with the highest points off of turnovers. And honestly, I just think while Marquette has had kind of a letdown of a season when it comes to things, I think they're as high as fifth in the AP poll. But I think players, like I said, Stevie Mitchell, Cam Jones, David Joplin are going to be too much for University of New Mexico. And that's no disrespect to University of New Mexico. Like, I think Donovan Dent, Nelly Jr., I think it's a very talented roster. They've got some they've got some good wins this year. They've got lots of wins over the current field. They decimated San Diego State. They swept Utah State. They split with San Diego State. They lost by 8 and they blew them out. They got blown out by St. John's, and then they had a decent win over the UCLA Bruins. So they're a solid tournament team. I know a lot of Marquette's key wins or key games against the field were losses, but over half of those were to St. John's. They played St. John's 3 times this season. I think most teams that would play St. John's 3 times this season would lose all 3. But for me, I've got Marquette here. I know it's not necessarily a trendy pick among people, but I've got Marquette.
Well, I might be going with the trends because I got New Mexico winning this one. I'm sorry. I see them with a very solid resume and a very solid team. And I think they're not going to let Marquette slow them down in their pace of play. I think New Mexico is going to be able to come out and set the pace that they want and really dominate with paint play and spraying the ball out. So I got New Mexico winning this one.
Next game to round out our southern quadrant, we've got Michigan State versus Bryant. I don't think this is a lot of explanation needed. I mean, it's Michigan State for me. Tom Izzo. Yes, they've been known to have some kind of brutal first-round exits, but those are usually against, Power 5 caliber teams. And honestly, Bryant, I'm not too terribly high on. Yes, I believe they do have Doug Edert from the St. Peter's team a few years ago. But outside of that, Bryant, if they were a mid-major team that had single-digit losses, I'd be taking them a little more seriously. And like you said, this could be soundbited into oblivion right here. But I've got Michigan State. I had no disrespect to the American East Conference, but Bryant was not the best team that could have come out of there. So for me, I've got Michigan State.
For Doug being in Bryant right now, I'm noticing a significant lack in my notes of white three-point shooters in my analysts of top scorers in Bryant right now. So that's a little bit unfortunate and going to be the reason why I got to roll with Michigan State. Just overall dominant play in Big Ten, the Big Ten Conference. I like them a lot. I have them moving on.
Up next, we've got – what's up?
Do you want to continue with the South bracket and go all the way till the end of the South and then move on? Or do you want to just scroll down to the West?
We can do that. I feel like since we've already broken down these teams, it'll go a little bit quicker. So, yeah, I feel like that's a good way to do it. So, here, up next, we've got – for you, we've got Auburn versus Creighton. And for me, we've got Auburn versus Louisville. So, I'll let you take it away with Auburn-Creighton.
Well, with Auburn-Creighton, I just like Auburn. I have Auburn going a pretty long way in my bracket. So I have them taking down Creighton. Just overall, I like Creighton's style of play a lot, but I don't think it's going to be a match for Auburn. With players like Broome and Chad Baker, I just see Auburn taking this one.
Understandable. I actually have something different. Every few tournaments, we see a 1 versus 9 and 1 versus 8 upset. And for me, that's happening right here. For me, I've got the Louisville Cardinals beating the Auburn Tigers here. For me, Auburn, they've been on kind of a slide. They've lost 4 of their last 5 games. And then they had a horrible showing in the SEC tournament. It just wasn't great. I don't think did they even win a game in the SEC tournament, if I'm not mistaken?
No, they lost to Tennessee. Wait, they did get a win. They did get a win then.
They did get a win?
Yeah, Arkansas.
Oh, yeah. They beat Arkansas. Oh, wait, that is correct. They did beat Arkansas. But for me, that's an up-and-down Arkansas team. That's an Arkansas team that got blown up by one of the worst Division I schools, the South Carolina Gamecocks. For me, I just like Louisville. They've got a lot of momentum going for them. They made it to the ACC championship game. They came up just short against Duke. They're out. They've got something to prove. And who do they have in their sights immediately if they are able to get past Creighton? They've got Auburn waiting for them. So I think Louisville, they're just gonna have the nice energy, like what I broke down. They're efficient. Auburn at times Auburn has been one of the most efficient teams in the nation. I think they are for a while there, they were the model team to beat. Pace wise, Louisville and Auburn play about the same pace. They play just above average, so there's not going to be a too terribly fast paced game, but it'll be fast paced, a bit above average. But for me, I think with just all the momentum that's going for Louisville, that's going to favor them. In order for Auburn to win this game, they're going to be able to need to slow it down, and that's just not their style of play. So for me, I think just this given the circumstances, given how each team is trending, I think that's going to favor Louisville for me.
Honestly, you're starting to make me a little bit of a Louisville believer right now. And maybe in another bracket, I think I might have them going a little bit further. I'm not going to lie. But I'm sticking by my picks right now. But going on to San Diego State versus Texas A&M, I might be smoking crack right now. I might be on some crack right now, but I don't know. I just see UC San Diego, and I see Cinderella team written all over it, and with just a up and down, not like up and down inconsistent. I'm just saying like a Texas A&M team that has had some good wins, but some also pretty pivotal losses. I just see UC San Diego making a run in this year's tournament, so I got them moving on to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, this is certainly an interesting matchup, and I can see a world where either team wins here. So I would wholeheartedly not be surprised if UC San Diego pulls this off. Texas A&M is kind of a more extreme example of Auburn. Well-oiled machine, horribly efficient. I mean, like horribly in a good way. They're horribly efficient on both ends of the ball, but they're kind of on a slide as of late.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't been as good. They did not have the showing in the SEC tournament that they wanted. Like we talked about that mid-season slide they had that they were able to recover from. If any team can recover from a slide, it's Texas A&M. But for me, I think they don't turn the ball over a lot. Yes, UC San Diego is probably gonna get some turnovers out of them, but for me, I've honestly got Texas A&M here. Like I said, they're just sufficient on both sides of the ball. I think they're one of the few teams when it comes to their slides, they're able to snap out of it just like that. We've seen that several times throughout the season. So I think them losing to Texas, they lost to Texas in the SEC tournament, right?
I believe so, yes.
I think losing to their rival in the SEC tournament is enough of a wake-up call. So I think after a possible scare with Yale, I think they'll be kind of scared straight, and they'll be back on the straight and narrow for now. We'll see when it comes to the next round. For now. Moving on, we've got I think we both agree on this. We've got UNC versus Iowa State. You want to take this one away?
Listen, I don't want to be like too much of a UNC homer. Like I honestly, just with UNC's inability to perform against like quad one teams, I think it might end for UNC right here. So would I like to see them win? Absolutely, but like I'm not gonna lie, just with their inability to get quad one wins, I know like Ole Miss would technically fall under that category, but I just feel like that's a little bit different with like UNC on the up, Ole Miss a little bit on the down. I just feel like Iowa State's too consistent. I got the Cyclones winning this one.
I do as well. Iowa State is one of those teams that's been really consistent. Now, unless when it comes to playing Houston's kind of had their number this season, but outside of that, they've been their team's been Mr. Consistent. That you can always kind of count on them to get a result. Yes, they've been upset a few times, but hey, when is a top 10 team not upset a few times this season? Like it happens. So I've got Iowa State. So up next, you and I have either Marquette versus Michigan State, and then you have New Mexico versus Michigan State. So I'll let you take it away with New Mexico, Michigan State.
With New Mexico, Michigan State, I got Michigan State winning this one. As much as I like the performance that New Mexico can bring, I just don't think it's going to compare to the quality that Michigan State has, just with their stacked resume, being able to beat teams like Illinois, Purdue, Maryland, Wisconsin, one time. Like I just see Michigan State and I'm like this is a quality team. So I got them beating New Mexico.
Yeah. I agree. They're a quality team. This is the every year it's that's what they, you hear the old adage, or not the old adage, but like the argument, where they're Michigan State, they must be good. They are this year. They simply are. They're a well-rounded team, well coached by Tom Izzo. Could possibly want to be one of his last years. So I think he's, like I said, they've been firing on all cylinders all season. They've swept Michigan in convincing fashion, and Michigan another really hot team right now. But like I said, I agree. I've got Michigan State. So moving on from there, we're on to our Elite Eight picks, where we have for Aiden UCSD versus Auburn, and for me Texas A&M versus Louisville.
I got Auburn winning against UCSD. I like UCSD, but I think the run would end right here. Hypothetically, I just think Auburn's too much of a too much of an ideal team to just bigger, able to get those threes and more solid on defense. And I don't think they're going to be making many turnovers against UCSD. So I got Auburn winning this one.
For me, Louisville versus Texas A&M. Like I said, Texas A&M, one of the better, more consistent teams in this bracket. I think I'm kind of torn on whether I think Louisville has enough here. When it comes to Texas A&M, think this is one of the ones where in my bracket I've had big deliberation about it. Both teams didn't really fare well against, like when I look at my tiebreakers here, both teams didn't really fare well against Tennessee. Did both play Purdue? No, they did not. Who else do they have in common? They don't have a whole lot in common when it comes to matchups. Honestly, I'm just gonna go off of vibes on this one. Like I said, Texas A&M has the ability to turn it on, but they've also got the ability to turn it off. So for me, I've got Louisville here. I think this is just their year with Pat Kelsey. However, I think the Elite Eights is as far as they're going to get if they do end up winning this game. So I've got Louisville in this one. LU/AUB. Here we go. Moving on, we've got Iowa State versus Michigan State. This if we get this, we'd be spoiled to get this.
Oh,
when
yes,
it comes
absolutely,
to it,
absolutely.
we'd be spoiled to get this.
Yeah, just with the overall playmaking ability of both teams, with Iowa State, like Curtis Jones, Michigan State, Jaden Atkins, just overall, like this would be an absolutely great matchup to have. I might just be like simping for the seeds right now, as they say, like not going too against the grain right now. But I just really like Michigan State. I have them moving on. I just think overall the seeding is correct. I think Michigan State's just overall the better team compared to Iowa State. Iowa State has had a bunch of solid wins, but in the end, I just feel like Michigan State's performance in Big Ten play is a lot better than Iowa State's performance in Big 12 play.
I agree, and Michigan State has just swung on everyone they've played. They've handled Purdue, they've handled Maryland, they've split with Wisconsin. Yes, they lost to the Kansas Jayhawks, and Iowa State did beat Kansas, but those are two very different teams. Michigan State played Kansas all the way back in November when they were kind of hot. They were the trendy team. They were playing well. This wasn't the Kansas that then fell apart. So for me, Michigan State's just got the better resume. They've taken on way, way too many good teams and beaten them. Michigan State's one of those teams where they've got great offensive and defensive efficiency. They're one of those teams that scores a lot. They stop a lot. They are prone to scoring droughts, as I've seen a few times throughout the season. But whenever they go through big scoring droughts, usually that second half, they come out swinging on all cylinders. It's like those games where you see those upsets brewing where, everything seems to be going right for the lower seed. But then in the second half, the big dog clicks on. I think that's how it's going to be. Even worst case scenario for Michigan State. So for me, I've got Michigan State as well. I guess you could say I'm simping for the seed as well. So our Elite Eight matchup for you is Auburn, Michigan State. For me, is Louisville, Michigan State.
I got Auburn, and I guess you got Michigan State.
I do have Michigan State. Like I think that's as far as Louisville gets for me. I think this Michigan State team's too good. Would I say they're national championship contender? No, but I definitely think they have Final Four potential. So for me, like I said, they've got Final Four potential, but ultimately, I do think this is the end of the road for them when it comes down to it. So for me, I've got Michigan State in my Final Four on this side of the bracket. So for me and Aiden, that will conclude our South region. We've got MSU/AUB. We could one thing I might do after this is I might fill out a bracket for both of us using these picks, and like we could post it on our Instagram and have it update throughout the thing, and like this is where we're at, and we could like check in on it in future videos.
I'm updating my bracket right now on ESPN. I can once like this podcast we're done recording. I'll see if I can send it to you or send it like make a group or something like that.
Oh, that could be cool. So moving on and out, we are now into the West region. My bad, the West region. So starting out, Florida, Norfolk State, Florida. A lot of people think they should have been the consensus number one seed, just with how they've played. I mean, they won the SEC tournament. They've looked absolutely scary. They made quick work of Yes, it was close, but they made work of teams like Tennessee and just other people. They destroyed Alabama. For me, they've got their resume, their style of play. They play fast, but they're efficient about it. They're one of these deadly teams that's a national title contender. For me, I've got Florida.
Yeah, I got Florida as well. I mean, they're just overall just an absolute deadly team that you don't want to be caught on the wrong side of. With like Walton Clayton, just averaging around 18 points a game. He is just can absolutely just put it on. I don't think Norfolk State's going to be able to have a real answer for them. So I got Florida winning this one.
Up next, we've got UConn in Oklahoma. Oklahoma's a team where, I know it's semantics at this point to argue whether a team should be in or should not be in. Oklahoma's team, for me, they were 6-12 in SEC play. They were nowhere near 500. They don't deserve to be there. Meanwhile, UConn, we can argue about seeding. I think they should be seeded a little higher, but at this point, that's semantics. You made the tournament. That's all that matters. Now you need to prove you deserve to be there. But for me, this UConn team, they've got way too many weapons. They've got Hassan Diarra, Luke McNeely, Alex Carahan. Alex Carahan's basically unlimited range. He can back you down. Same thing, Mo Diarra. Or not Mo Diarra, sorry, that's NC State. Hassan Diarra. He can get into the lane and score as a guard, or he can beat you from outside. Luke McNeely, they're small forwards the same way. Both him and Alex Carahan kind of unlimited range, and just this kind of complex offense that Hurley runs where it's like, there's a fail-safe for everything. They've got second, third, and fourth options on every play. So for me, I've got UConn in this one.
I got UConn as well. I mean, if not off the sole purpose that like I have a little bit of a vendetta against Oklahoma right now, and nobody questioning the fact that a team that is well below 500 in conference play has made the NCAA tournament. That aside, I just think UConn overall is just a very strong team, really able to capitalize on threes, can really pick it up and put a game at a pace that they feel like they need, with strong wins against teams like Baylor, Texas early on in the season, out of conference, and just being able to survive the gauntlet that was the upper echelon of Big East play, because the upper half of Big East play is just like an absolute nightmare to play when you're playing teams like Marquette and St. John's. Just by them being able to like make it out alive, in my opinion, is enough for me to go with UConn on this one.
Up next, we've got a 5 versus 12. Statistically speaking, I think it's either the 6 or the 11s or the 5 versus 12, where the lower seed actually has a winning record against the 5 seed. Here, I'm siding with the trend, not because of the trend, but because so we've got Colorado State and Memphis, two teams that are, I'd say, relatively even. I mean, Memphis is 6-1 in quad one. Colorado State's 3-5. Honestly, for me, like all that matters is that you have quad one wins, not necessarily your record, because the average team with one wins is gonna have a losing record. Like, the only teams with winning records against quad one wins right now, outside of an outlier like Memphis, is like Duke and Auburn. And maybe some other top 10 teams. Like your average tournament team is going to be like 3-5, 4-6, 7-9 against quad one wins. Because statistically speaking, the majority of your quad one games, do you know where they're going to be? On the road in conference play.
Mm-hmm.
And it is particularly at the Power 5 level, it is incredibly hard to win on the road in conference play. So, for me, that's why I'm okay with losing records and quad one wins for me, is because most of those are going to be road conference games. Home quad one wins are kind of hard to come by. They usually have to be ranked teams. So that's why I'm okay with that. So for me, here I've got Colorado State. They're slightly more efficient than Memphis. They play a little slower, but Memphis is kind of, when it comes to their pace of play, I wouldn't say they're out of control fast, but they're not terribly efficient when it comes to the way they play. Yes, I know Memphis, they're a household name. They average about 1.1 points per possession, and then they average allowing less than 1 point per possession, but they also are in a weaker conference. 10 years ago, I would have said the American was probably a better conference than the Mountain West because it had the likes of Louisville, UConn, other big names in basketball, but now I'd say the Mountain West has them. And honestly, with Colorado being able to come out of the Mountain West alive, I believe they're the Mountain West champions, if I'm not mistaken. So they do have a little bit of momentum on their side. So for me, I've got Colorado State here.
I don't know. I'm honestly split on this one. I mean, Memphis is absolutely able to get like big wins early on in the season, like Michigan State. That's a very impressive win. I know it's early on in the season, but it's a solid win, and I feel like it's worth noting. For me, like I do acknowledge that Colorado State is definitely on a streak right now. They're playing with house money right now, in my opinion. Don't right now. Don't have anything to lose with Memphis. I feel like you have a lot to lose. You need to prove that it's about time to start showing some substantial results. Every single year I've been here and I'm like, oh, Memphis this, Memphis that, Memphis going to be making a run. And it's just I just don't hear that much from Memphis anymore. I've been hearing about a Memphis run for the longest time now, and it just doesn't come. And with that, I might just I think I'm going to go with Colorado State on this one.
Yeah. Let me fix that then. Whoops. Because you took that in a different direction I thought you were going to go.
Yeah.
Up next, we've got Maryland versus Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon last year, I believe they went on a little bit of a run, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to have to check the bracket real quick. But I'm pretty sure Grand Canyon picked up a few wins last year in March Madness. So I think they'll be a trendy team for a lot of people to pick. But for me, yes, this Maryland team's been hot and cold. But this Maryland team honestly has some really solid wins. Grand Canyon beat Mount St. Mary's last year and then was kind of close to Alabama. But for me, I've got Maryland here. Solid team. The Big Ten, I think, is an overrated basketball conference. But I think towards the top, they do have some really, really, really solid teams. But in this one, I just think the quality that Maryland has is going to be too much. They're one of the better teams. They're ranked in the top 25. they're up there. Yes, Grand Canyon, they were able to make some magic happen last year. They took a Final Four team to the wire. But for me, honestly, I've got Maryland winning this. It's just, I think they've got too much going for them. Derek Queen, 16 points per game, grabs 9 rebounds, averages essentially a double-double. Maryland, yes, they've got key losses to Marquette and Purdue, but they've in Michigan State and Ohio State, but they've also got key blowout wins over Illinois twice. I believe they have a pretty solid win over Wisconsin, who's a 3 seed. And I just think, Grand Canyon, they've really struggled against Power 5 teams this year. They got blown out by a bad Arizona team. They lost by 5 to Georgia, who is a team in the field, so no knock to them. But they've got a 7-point win over Stanford, which honestly you could have argued they could be a bubble team. And I know SEC fans are like, how dare you say that? But fucking fight me at this point. So yeah, I mean for me, I've got Maryland unless they play unless they just don't show up or leave the locker room. I've got Maryland in this one.
I got Maryland winning this one as well, but I wanted to bring up another statistic that I learned today in doing research about Grand Canyon. Did you know that Grand Canyon University's main campus is actually a 4-hour drive away from the actual Grand Canyon National Park? I feel like that's clickbait. So on the sheer fact that I've been lied to, and the fact that I can't get my fake degree from an actual school that is by the Grand Canyon, I'm going to have to go with Maryland on this one. Blueberry fact. Look that up.
Next.
Look it
next.
up.
Up next, we've got Missouri and Drake. I know this is a trendy matchup. Ben McCollum, a coach that I wanted to see at NC State. But I just think this is a perfect storm here for Drake. Drake does not play very fast. They are somewhat efficient. But for me, Missouri's too good. They play fast and they're efficient. Drake, on the other hand, when adjusted for strength of schedule, not very fast, not very efficient. I think unless a lot of things go wrong, I've got Missouri in this one, coming out of the SEC. This is one of the few SEC teams where I feel like I'm pretty high on. They've got good wins. They've got some bad losses, but, what tournament team doesn't? So, for me, I've got Missouri coming out of this one with a win.
I think Drake is one of the most overrated, trendy names right now, because I'd be on TikTok going oh, we got Drake picking this. If one of your most notable results is beating Miami 80-69, I'm sorry, I'm not necessarily sold on you as making a big run in the tournament. Once again, I'm probably going to get soundbited for that, but I just think Missouri's more consistent and just has all the intangibles and playmaking ability to move on. So I got Missouri winning this one.
Yeah, it's a little closer than I'd like to admit. I mean, they do have a solid win over Vanderbilt, but like I said, if we are having to reach back to, we mentioned this a few episodes, if we're having to reach back to, 2024 to look to find some quality wins, that you haven't done enough this season.
They did get a solid win against Vanderbilt. I do want to say that a very good win, but if I'm pulling up notable wins on ESPN and the first notable win that you have is Miami, we have a problem. That shouldn't even be. That should not be in the quality wins. You could put put saying your win against St. Louis School of the Blind as a quality win over Miami this year. The only quality win that Miami has had was the fact that they were able to fire Kevin Keats.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Kevin Keats. I loved you. I loved you.
Up next, we've got Aiden's Cinderella versus Texas Tech. I'm gonna let you. This is your Cinderella, so I'm gonna let you take it away.
I've been hyping on the UNCW hype train from the beginning. Do I admit this is a little bit of a tough seeding? Yes, it is. I'm not gonna lie. it's not the best poll right now. Texas Tech, they have a bunch of solid wins, but like honestly, in my opinion, they've been sliding a little bit. Big 12 play near the end of February, going into March a little bit. I was a little bit like, what's happening, Texas Tech? It's a very solid team, but in my opinion, like with UNCW, like they've been able to get some solid wins in conference play. Absolutely swept Charleston Cougars, getting big wins in state against ECU and App State. Like I just see UNCW, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I've just been watching too much UNCW basketball. But I see Donovan Newby, uh, Kamari McGriff. Like I just see a perfect Cinderella team. I got UNCW winning this one. It's shocking the world.
Shock in the world. Lance Anthony picking up a few points.
Lance
Sorry, Shane
Anthony.
Anthony. Shane Anthony. Sorry, Shane
Shane
Anthony
Anthony.
picking up a few points.
Hell yeah, hell yeah.
Shout out Our Lady of Lords. For me here, I've got unfortunately not the dog on someone we went to middle school with, but unfortunately I've got Texas Tech. They have been on a little bit of a slide, but ultimately Texas Tech is another one of those teams where they're solid. You know, they play in a really tough conference, but I mean, if you're Power Five, who doesn't? Texas
Hmm.
Tech is one of those teams where they're perfectly balanced. They don't play too fast. They don't play too slow. They're really good on defense. They're really good on offense, but their defense is not that much better than and I don't mean this in a derogatory way. Neither their defense nor their offense outshines the other. They're able to get a lot done, but sometimes in March that can be your undoing. That can be your undoing, not having kind of that flair factor. But for me, I've got Texas Tech here. You know, they do a lot of things right. And I think doing a lot of things right simply, like in a simple way, can take you decently far in March. So I've got Texas Tech in this game. Up next, we've got the absolute coaching masterclass that's going to be taking place in Providence, Rhode Island. I may be making my way down for the 10:30 game for Kansas, Arkansas on Thursday, but I don't know if I'm willing to pay $150 after the repairs I'm going to have to pull to this in a few days. If I didn't have to repair this tomorrow, I'd be there, but I'm likely going to have to drop $300 on this bitch. So I will not be at the St. John's game. I will not be at the Kansas game, unlike I wanted to be. So, or the Clemson game, but hey, different side of the bracket. We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get there. I promise. So, but like I said, here, I'm not really high on Kansas. I think Kansas was completely undeserving of a 7 seed here. If I'm being completely honest. Arkansas was a team where I don't think that they should have made the tournament either, but they picked up some wins in their conference tournament that I think pushed them over the line. Honestly, with how Arkansas is playing as of late, I've actually got them over Kansas here. I just think Kansas. There's not a lot of rhyme or reason to this. I'm not going to try and justify this with Ryan Hammer's, trapezoid of excellence, but Kansas has not been playing their best basketball as of late. If I'm being honest. Neither has Arkansas, and neither team's been incredibly efficient as of late. So I don't know. I just have a gut feeling about Arkansas here. I think Calipari is going to be able to pull something out here, and I think Arkansas is going to come away with the win here.
I got the same on my bracket. Just Arkansas, like being able to kind of string together a solid string of wins in conference tournament play has kind of got me a little bit more high on them and made me a little bit more of a believer. Uh, Shout out Boogie Fland, scoring 15 points a game. I just like saying his name. Wanted to fit in there, but I got Arkansas winning this one. I got the Razorbacks. Just for me, I feel like Kansas has been a little bit too up and down for me. They've kind of been like UNC-ing it a little bit right now, and not in a good way. Not in a good way. Like started off the season like number one team, everyone was high on them, but just kind of fell off a lot. Able to come back, and I feel like they proved definitely that they need to be in the tournament, but I think a 7 seed is a little bit too high for them, and I just like. This Arkansas team, and I got them winning.
Up next, we've got Rick Pitino making his return to Providence, where he kind of had his big break in coaching. Went to his first Final Four. So it's them versus the University of Omaha. For me, I think this is a no-brainer. St. John's, they've just been playing so well. They take a lot of really quality shots. They play really good defense. But unlike a team that usually plays, like their main offense is twos, like high percentage twos, and usually those teams don't play very fast. But the unique thing about St. John's is they also play in transition. They play very well in transition. They're one of the best teams in transition. And one thing that Rick Pitino credits this to is he goes, the most important thing that if you want to play in transition, you have to teach your guys how to talk in transition. It can't just be this willy-nilly, almost like Star Wars-like atmosphere where you got shit flying around, laser bolts going over your head. This just chaos, We're either getting a free layup or a wild three going up. No, he wants his guys communicating. He wants there to be calmness in the chaos of transition. So for me, I've got St. John's here. I think St. John's just too good in this instance.
Me too. I got St. John's. I saw this one video on TikTok. I don't know who made it, but they were saying like St. John's is going to get fraud checked because they play in the weak Big East. I'm sorry. Like, if you think St. John's is not a legit team, in my opinion, you just don't know ball. You just don't know ball. This is a very solid St. John's team, and I'm gonna pull a little spoiler alert for like going ahead. I got them in the Final Four already. Like in my opinion, like this St. John's team just fires on all cylinders, plays like I don't know, it's just something in my DNA. Like I don't know, I just see St. John's and I'm like, I don't know why, but I just become like a 50-year-old dad just going like, that's how you play basketball out there. That's good basketball. Just getting them 2-point field goals, just getting them shots off. I just really like St. John's. I mean, you didn't need to like just add we can you can do it later, but like I'm just saying, like I got St. John's going a long way in this one. And if like in my opinion, if you think they're a fraud right now, in my opinion, you just do not know ball.
Yeah, my favorite argument that people have made against St. John's, like the Big East is weak. I'm sorry. The second lowest team in the Big East put absolute belt to ass to one of the trendiest teams in the Big 12 right now. And it was ugly. Like a battered Providence that was basically playing with a starting five made up of all freshmen beat BYU by 22. And it wasn't even like BYU was having a bad shooting night either. They shot about what they averaged this year. So I'm just saying, like, if the second to worst team in the Big East is able to absolutely run fade on like 1 year champions, I think you need to keep your mouth shut a little bit. Just, yes, that game was back in December, but like, we're not pulling that back to say that's a quality win for Providence and they should be in the tournament. No, I'm just saying, like, if you're sitting here and telling me that the Big East isn't a quality league when you've got a bottom feeder that year absolutely housing a Big 12 title contender, don't talk to me. Like, don't talk to me.
Spiritually, I'm a Big East fan. Like, spiritually, I know I'm a UNC guy through and through, but I don't know, just spiritually, like, I live a little bit vicariously. In another life, I am a Big East homer.
That's why I got this on. The throwback, Providence's gold throwbacks. Up next, speaking of the Big East, this is a game where I wrestle with this a lot. I wrestled with this. I almost had this.
If you pull the trigger, man, I'm pulling the trigger too.
For me, This is a hard one for me.
Yes.
I've already picked an 8 over a 1, which I think was a valid one. But like I said, I could see that game going either way. For me, this one's really hard. I've been back and forth on this. I like the team. I like both of these teams. I think they're really good. Um, I know Hurley's made for the tournament. Florida, when you look at their resume, I honestly I know people could argue that they could be, one of the best teams. They could have been the number one overall seed. But UConn also, not to be outdone, has several wins over the field. They swept Marquette in convincing fashion. They've played St. John's close. They did get blown out on the road. They beat Creighton on the road. They beat the Texas Longhorns by 10 at Texas. They beat Baylor by 4 amidst their slide. But I think this will be close, but ultimately I'm giving this one to Florida. If this were a UConn team that just had one more piece, like one more guy that could be, explode for 15 when the other guys aren't pulling, not pulling their weight, but I mean, when the shots aren't falling. But this UConn team really is only kind of like a three-headed spear or kind of a three-headed dog. But that's still those are still dangerous teams. You don't want to come up against them. If this were any other one seed other than Florida, if this were Auburn, I'd be flagging them for upset alert because, in my opinion, I think Florida's better than Auburn by a long shot. Maybe not Duke, but if this were, say, Houston, I have a lot of respect for Houston. I have them going very far. But if this were Houston or Auburn, I'd have you here. But for me, I've got the University of Florida in this one. I think it's close, but I've got Florida.
I got Florida too. I mean, I was really close to pulling the trigger on UConn. I'm not gonna lie, but I just feel like I just think Florida's just too strong overall. Just absolute. They just have more weapons, in my opinion. And do I think if we get this matchup, I'm tuning in. It is a definite must watch, in my opinion. But I got Florida winning this one, just overall. With their team, with Walter Clayton, Elliot, Elijah Martin, just a very strong team. Able to they've gotten really solid wins against Alabama, Tennessee. I'm high on Florida, so I got Florida winning this one.
Moving on, we've got Colorado State versus Maryland. This one's another one where I went back and forth because there are times where we've had 12 seeds going a little bit of a run. They take out the 5 seed, they take out the 4 or the 3 seed, and then they come up against the big bad 1 seed or 2 seed. But then it just kind of falls apart from there. But looking at this for me, I think this is the end of the road for Colorado State. Yes, they've got decent wins this season, but they haven't been great against other teams in the field. They did get the 2-1 series win over Utah State, but they've got a 15-point loss to San Diego State, who just lost by 40 to Carolina. They lost by 15 to Ole Miss. So for me, I think this is where the dream ends for Colorado. I just think Maryland's going to be too much to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, I reluctantly picked Colorado State against Memphis. I do not see them beating Maryland whatsoever. Maryland, in my opinion, is just way too solid. Just a lot of really solid wins, and just overall with I just have Maryland winning this one. They have more components, and I just like their resume a lot more than I do Colorado State. I was iffy on Colorado State versus Memphis. I kind of threw them a bone there. Honestly, I might go back on that one, but I got Maryland beating Colorado State.
I do as well. Up next, we've got Missouri versus UNCW for you, and Missouri versus Texas Tech for me. Who do you got here?
Now, with everyone saying that like Drake is the team to fraud check Missouri, I got UNCW fraud checking Missouri. I'm sorry. I'm still going on this UNCW hype train right now, baby. Am I the only one on this bandwagon? Absolutely. But I'm gonna be rocking this bandwagon come in the next couple days when everyone's going like, what even is Wilmington? I'm gonna be like, you should have been here from the beginning because I called it. Like I like Missouri a lot, but I just think like they've had some inconsistencies. There's some obvious like little flaws in the armor, as they might say. And just with them being up and down, I just don't see like I see them like thinking like, oh, that's cute. UNCW got a win against Texas Tech. How cute! I don't see them coming out and giving them the respect that they deserve. So I got UNCW.
Yeah, for me, I've actually got Missouri over Texas Tech. I think Missouri has the better resume. Um, they fared a fair bit better against people in the tournament field. Missouri, yes, they do have the questionable loss to um, Illinois, but they've got that big win over Alabama, 110-98. I mean, they've kept it close with multiple other SEC schools that are really up there. They've got a win over Florida on the road, 83-82. Then, yes, they do have a 14-point loss to Florida in the conference tournament, but I think being able to go at Florida and win by one in January when they were on that tear, I think that speaks volumes to me. Texas Tech has been good, but they have had some questionable losses at home. Obviously, the Houston game where they just kind of fell apart at home, and I believe they had the Iowa State game at home. They also lost to Arizona in the conference tournament by 6, and that's an Arizona team. Yes, I think they're good, but I think that's one where I think Texas Tech should have had that. Um, yes, this Texas Tech team did win at Houston, but then they weren't able to finish the job at home against Houston later on in the season. So for me, I've got Missouri.
I just want to point out that there is a possibility in my bracket. Like we haven't gotten there yet. Like we haven't talked about Duke, but there's a very real possibility because I picked UNC like losing to Iowa State. That the only North Carolina school in the Sweet 16, in my opinion, might be UNC Wilmington. So
Oh,
I just think that's funny. But like we haven't gotten to Duke yet. But like I'm just saying. But moving on.
moving on, we've got the University of Florida versus Maryland. For me, I think this is a no-brainer. I mean,
Well,
obviously in
technically, we
March.
didn't pick Arkansas versus St. John's yet. I mean, I
Oh, we
did.
didn't.
It was
Whoops.
it was
Oh,
I picked St. John's, but
I picked St. John's. So I just think St. John's got too much quality. I mean, the way they play, Arkansas being up and down. Arkansas, they can either hang with the best, or they can have the ability to get blown out. Obviously, that Vanderbilt loss was, or not. Excuse me, not the Vanderbilt loss. Obviously, like some of the other losses they've had have been just kind of questionable. Let me actually take a look real quick. A little look see here. Back to the round of 32, I go for this. Arkansas, St. John's. Let me take a look. There's one Arkansas loss I want to point out. Arkansas, they kind of have that win over Kentucky, and that's kind of about it. They lost to Alabama by 4 in a decent fashion. They lost at home. They did take it to Auburn on the road, but this is a team that I think I'm not a big Morgan Wallen fan, but I think this team is best described by like his song 98 Braves. They're close, but they're never close enough. They get it done some of the time. And I'm not comparing them to the greatness of the 98 Braves, but like this team just gets close. They're never close enough. They take Alabama to the brink. They take Texas A&M on the road to the brink. They take the number 1 Auburn Tigers on the road to the brink. But they're not able to get it done. home against Florida, they lose by single digits. Then, against Tennessee, they just get absolutely hornswoggled. So, for me, I've got St. John's. They're just the more consistent team. So, I've got St. John's here. So, now moving on to the Sweet 16, we've got the University of Florida versus Maryland, and then we've got UNCW/Missouri versus St. John's. So, let's head into the University of Florida versus Maryland. I think we both have that, right?
Yes.
I've started off the past couple of people. Let's hear what you have to say about this.
Part of me is just not as necessarily high on Florida as you are, but I want to say that Maryland might take it over Florida, but I feel like I need to go with my head and not my gut on this one, and I got to go with Florida just because I think overall they're just a better team. Like, part of my heart is saying like Maryland. You know what? I got Maryland going. Like, I got Maryland winning this one. I'm sorry. Listen, like, Florida's great and all. I know, like, they on paper have the better wins. They got the wins against Auburn, the wins against Alabama and Tennessee. I don't know. I just feel like SEC, like, might get fraud checked on this one in this bracket. I feel like the SEC is in a rude awakening for this tournament. So I got Maryland winning this one. I know it's not the smart one. I think on paper Florida's better, but I don't know. I just got the vibe. I would love to see this matchup. I would love to see this matchup.
Sometimes in a bracket, you can't always use logic. You hear about people winning the bracket pool, picking favorite colors, throwing darts at a dartboard. If it's people, there's one dude who threw dildos at a wall. But like any good mafia movie, you have to have some setups to kind of get the narratives that you want. You have to have some setups to get the narrative across. So for me, I've got the University of Florida, and you'll see why in a second. You'll see why in a second. Now I'm not going to elaborate further, but you'll see why in a second. So moving on, we've got UNCW and St. John's or Mizzou and St. John's. I'll let you, just to keep this one a slow burner, I'll let you start off with this one.
Yeah, nothing slow about this one. I revealed my hand early on. I got St. John's winning this one. I think the UNCW magic run ends here. I'm sorry. I just see St. John's that they're just solid on all aspects of the ball. And I like, in my opinion, I think St. John's is the perfect team. You said like the perfect team might be Florida. That's not my opinion. I think St. John's is the perfect team in this tournament, and I think they got honestly snubbed of a first seed, in my opinion.
I agree. For me, I've got St. John's over UNCW. I think UNCW at times will make it interesting, but then I think St. John's will ultimately take control of that game just with the quality they have. So, for me, this has set up St. John's versus Florida, and for you, St. John's.
Well, your game was Mizzou versus.
Mizzou. Beating Mizzou. My bad. Not UNCW. Beating Mizzou. My bad.
Yeah.
Either way, I think St. John's. Sorry, I had trouble reading my handwriting. St. John's, for me, they've got just the more quality. I think, like you said, with how Mizzou's up and down, I've got St. John's here. I think they're just the more quality team. Like I said, not going to elaborate further because, sometimes with good mafia movies, you have to, pull some strings behind the scenes to get the narratives. So this leaves us with either Florida versus St. John's or Maryland versus St. John's. Would you like to take this one away?
St. John's. St. John's.
Here is where my master plan comes into effect. Yes, I've said Florida's the perfect team, and on paper they are. But St. John's offense is predicated around getting really solid shots in non-ideal circumstances, even in games where they've been out of it. UConn was up almost 20 on them, and St. John's couldn't hit a bull in the ass. They couldn't get the ball inside, but they still found a way. The mob boss of Jamaica Plains always finds a way. Looking at it here, net-wise, yeah, Florida, you could argue they could be the number one overall seed. You could argue a whole lot of stuff about Florida. You could argue they're the perfect team. Out of the teams within, the trapezoid of excellence, if you will, that's, pace versus efficiency, they look like the ultimate team. But, when it comes to balance, who the ultimate balance is, St. John's, they're right smack dab in the middle. Like I said, they don't play too fast. They don't play too slow. Yes, you've heard people talking about how, there's never been a team that shot below 35% from three that's won the national championship. But with how many trends people have been talking about, the national champion's been in the top 12 week 6 AP poll. The national champion's done this. The national champion's done that. But a lot of them don't overlap. One of those things is going to have to be broken this year. One of those things is going to have to be the exception to the rule this year. So for me, I just like St. John's, their defense. Yes, Florida has a good defense, but for me, it's all about St. John's. I think they're taking the game back to the basics, and sometimes that's just what you need in March. Florida, they're the best offensive team adjusted for strength of schedule. You know who the best defensive team adjusted for strength of schedule is?
St. John's.
The Red Storm of St. John's. St. John's averages allowing 0.8 points per possession. That is unfathomable. On the average possession against another team, when the other team has the ball, they don't score on the average possession. I think that is mind-boggling to a point that I don't think people realize. People talk about St. John's going to get fraud checked. This isn't a league with teams that are able to explode for 100 points on any night, like Creighton, Marquette, who play really fast. This is a team that was able to slow them down. Florida really hasn't come against a team that's been able to slow them down. And outside of UConn, I don't see another team that could slow them down. I think UConn gives them a scare, but I think St. John's has that third and that fourth option that UConn doesn't have. And that's why I've got St. John's in this one. So I've got St. John's moving on to the Final Four in the west portion of the bracket. All right, welcome back into our East Regional. In this one, we've got Duke versus Mount St. Mary's. Mount St. Mary's coming off of their, honestly, you could consider an upset win over American. Mount St. Mary's is the lowest rated net team in this tournament. Mount St. Mary's, I believe, is, hold on, give me a second to fact check this. I think they are below, I think they may even be 275 if I'm not mistaken. Let's take a look here. Let's scroll all the way down just to do a little fact checkaroo. Where are they? Mount St. Mary's, 236. So Mount St. Mary's with essentially what you could consider an upset over American University. Just let me fact check to make sure American's not above them. American, a whole 10 spots above them. So this you could technically consider this an upset. But for me, the road ends here against Duke. I think, the whole mantra of this game is just get Cooper Flagg back on his feet. Throw him a few softballs, just get some momentum under him. He doesn't have to play the whole game, but, just get him up and moving around, Think of this as like that midweek game in college baseball where you've got your starting pitchers coming back from injury. And, you don't want to play him in the weekend series against Stanford because, that'd be like throwing a moth to a flame. Or you want him to play them, but, you'd rather him get a few warm-up pitches in against a Davidson or a UNC Greensboro. So I think that's what this matchup is here. So I've got Duke in this one. What about you?
I got Duke in this one as well. I mean, Mount St. Mary is able to get the good win against America. Interesting fact about that game: those two schools, Gareth decided to decline for swim. So shout out to that. But other than that, uh, like Duke, obviously just an absolute powerhouse. I don't see Mount St. Mary's being able to edge one out over Duke, especially if with how loaded their roster is. I know they're going to be giving Cooper Flag a little bit of minutes, but I imagine he'd be like either stepping in like mid first half, just kind of like seeing where Duke is at that point and maybe giving him a few minutes, but just kind of easing him into the game. Hopefully he's not in for the whole game, but I see him being used sparingly but effectively. I got Duke winning this one.
Up next, we've got a good matchup, and honestly, I know it is a good matchup, but for me, this is honestly probably one of the more lopsided matchups when it comes to the 8-9 games. Mississippi State versus Baylor. Mississippi State, they've been up and down in the SEC, but they've got some really solid wins within the SEC conference play. Yeah, they were towards the bottom, but they've been in now the top 25. Baylor's just kind of been all over the place. Yeah, I believe Baylor does have a win over St. John's, but that was, if we're having to, reach back that far to find a good win for this Baylor team. Let me double check to make sure they don't have any other good wins, but you know what I'm saying? Like I want to fact check this. I absolutely slandered them. But if I'm being honest, their resume wasn't too terribly impressive to me.
Getting a good win against Kansas, but mainly on their just they've been able to lose close against Houston, lose close against Texas Tech, lose close to Arizona. They're just kind of I feel like they Mississippi State and Baylor have kind of been in the same position in their respective conferences. It's just being respectable, but just not upper echelon. Mississippi State obviously has a little bit more going for them. Something about me though, I don't know, part of me wants to go with Baylor on this one, but I'm gonna have to lean towards Mississippi State.
Up next, we've got. This is an interesting. We've got Oregon and Liberty.
These next two games I feel like are very interesting. Oregon versus Liberty and Arizona versus Akron are very interesting. I think Oregon's going to be getting fraud checked pretty soon, but I just need to figure out when.
I agree, and Oregon is an interesting case. Oregon, if you look at their results in the teams they play, by the name, they haven't had a great season. But if you look at this team metrically, if you look at this team purely from just the statistics, you take the names and the faces away, and you just look at quad 1 wins. They're 8-7 in quad 1, 8-2 in quad 2. They are 24-9. They oddly have a similar resume to Tennessee. Now, I'm not in any way saying they are on the same level as Tennessee, but I'm saying if you just take away all the names and faces and you go based on resume, their resume is really good on paper. But when you actually look at who they played and how they played, you think a lot differently. For me here, I've obviously got Oregon. Oregon, they're not where I want them to be, but where I think they'd want to be. They play a little too fast, probably for their own good. With that being said, they're not a fast team, but for how inefficient they are, you'd like to see them slow down a little, if you know what I mean. You'd like to see them play a little bit slower. But for me, I just don't think it'll be enough for Liberty. Liberty plays really slow, and they're not that compared to the rest of the field. I'm not saying they're not efficient, but compared to the rest of the field, for how slow they play, they're not efficient enough to warrant how slow they play. That's the whole point of the metrics that I'm using is you don't want to be too fast, you don't want to be too slow. If you play really, really fast, you want to be super efficient. But that's the same way with playing slow. You always want to be efficient, but you don't want to be too far either side of the aisle for your own good. And I just think Liberty, they play kind of just for how they are more efficient than most teams, but for the level of efficient they are, you'd hope they'd play a little faster to take advantage of that. But they're a little too inefficient to play how slow they do. So, because with the level of efficiency they have, you'd want to maximize possessions, and that with how slow they play, that is not what they do. So for me, that's why I've got Oregon.
I got Oregon as well, but I just always have to put an asterisk by Oregon because I just am not sold on this Oregon team at all.
Horrible
And
losses.
yeah, they've not necessarily as strong of a team in the Big Ten as like a lot of people have you think. Just a solid team, but just not the best. So, but I got Oregon winning this one, which brings us to Arizona versus Akron. I don't know if I'm smoking crack on this one. Like Arizona, absolutely amazing team, but like this Akron team has been a little hot lately. They've been on a little bit of a roll. I've been feeling the Maction. I got Akron winning this one, and in an upset win. I understand if you don't have it. I know Caleb Love, like Jaden Bradley, like absolutely solid team. But I don't know. I just feel I'm feeling something from the Zips right now.
They do have a lot of momentum going for them, but I don't necessarily feel it. Arizona, I do like them. They play a little bit fast. They're not quite as efficient as I'd like them to be for how fast they play. But I just think Akron, like, no offense to them, but I just think Arizona's got a little bit too much quality. Now, obviously, if Caleb Love and company have an off night, I definitely think there is room and there is cracks in the armor for them to get in. There's cracks in the armor. But for me, I've got Arizona winning this one. I don't know how much further I have them going, but for me, right now, I've got Arizona.
Up next is BYU versus VCU. VCU, very solid A10 school. I believe they won the A10 championship, if I'm not mistaken. Am I mistaken?
I do not believe you are.
I believe I'm not. Got that win against George Mason. I don't know. I'm pretty split on this one. I know BYU is very solid. They did show some flaws earlier in this season. I know Gareth knows what I'm talking about. But overall, able to get a lot of solid wins against like Kansas, Arizona, Iowa State. Just the overall, like very solid Big 12 school. So I think I got the Cougars in this one.
I do too. VCU is another one of those mid-major teams who, despite being mid-major and having everything adjusted for strength of schedule, even after that, like kind of debuff they get from the lack of strength of schedule, they still are one of the best defensive teams in the nation. However, I think outside of that one loss to Houston, BYU is one of the hottest teams in the nation right now. They really are a night and day difference from before New Year's Eve. So for me, I've got BYU here. They're just all of the things they were good at last year, they've taken and improved. All the things that made them, questionable last year, they've kind of fine-tuned as the year's gone on. So for me, I've got them. They're a team that's kind of they're the team you want to be in March, You have good wins under your belt, like that prove you deserve to be there already. But it's not that you want to have flaws. You fixed your flaws as you've gone along, so you're battle tested. You've gone through adversity and you're hot. So you kind of like hit the trifecta there, if you know what I mean. You've got the resume, you've been through adversity, but you've also had successes. So for me, that's why BYU is a dangerous team. Moving on, we've got Wisconsin and Montana next. For me, I think Wisconsin's going to be too much. As of late, they're similar to BYU. Wisconsin's been good all year, but they've really taken off as of late. I really like them. I know they lost in the Big Ten championship game to Michigan, but Michigan's hot right now. And when teams are hot, they're going to be hot. So for me, I've got
Despite the
Wisconsin.
fact that we have them losing to UC San Diego.
Yeah, despite that, they're still a hot team. For me, I don't know. Montana, when it's come to playing like high major teams this year, they haven't fared well. I mean, they got almost doubled by Oregon. Tennessee almost doubled them. They kept it a little closer with Utah State. The closest they've come to anyone to beating anyone who was like in the field. They lost to San Francisco by 4, and they didn't even make it out of the WCC. They beat Cal State Northridge, who not sure how far they went in the Big West, but no offense, Parker, friend out in Montana, but I've got Wisconsin on this one.
Me as well.
Moving up next, this is one where a lot of people have an upset, but in my opinion, once you get to like the 7-10 and the 8-9s, that's not really an upset. That's honestly semantics at this point in terms of like 7 versus 10. I know a lot of people are going to have Vanderbilt there. Vanderbilt, good team out of the SEC. They're a little bit below 500, but they had a few wins in the conference tournament. They could, get them through the G&A palm, if you will, like the Garrett and Aiden rankings there. Mount St. Mary's is another one of those mid-major teams where when things are adjusted for strength of schedule, their defense is still way up there. This Vanderbilt team, shots really have – they're a good team. They're solid. They can take good shots. But they're a team that kind of relies on being able to shoot the ball well. And if they even have the slightest of off nights, I think that's going to bode well for Mount St. Mary's, in my opinion. So for me, I've got – or not Mount St. Mary's. It bodes well for St. Mary's. So for me, I've got St. Mary's taking this first round. What about you?
I mean, it's honestly a 50-50 for me. I mean, like, of the teams that don't pass the like 500 test for me, I believe Vanderbilt's the exception. They're just one of those teams that's always getting those like good wins against like Texas A&M on the road. And against Kentucky, but also some substantial losses. In the end, I just think if the shots don't lie, St. Mary's is gonna take it, and I just see St. Mary's winning.
Indubitably. Up next, to round out the bottom half, we've got Alabama versus Robert Morris. Alabama, one of the favorites to win the tournament. I got really nothing else to say. Compared to last year, these guys kind of play too fast for their own good. But I don't think that's anything that's going to harm them in this game, if I'm being honest. I just think the quality they have, obviously Mark Sears, I just think they've got just so much quality that I think it's going to be too much for Robert Morris.
Absolutely. I got Alabama as well.
So moving on to the round of 32, we've got Duke, Mississippi State. For me, this is a no-brainer. Even if Cooper Flagg's not healthy, I've got Duke here. And even if he is healthy and he's still getting back to it, I think even just having Cooper Flagg for a little bit of the game is going to help exponentially. Mississippi State's one of those teams that's been up and down, so I've got Duke by a decent amount in this game.
I don't know. Like, part of me was like saying like this might be the one where the 8 seed takes down the 1 seed, but just in the end, I just don't think either the 8 or 9 seed is strong enough to take down Duke here. So I got Duke moving on to the Sweet 16.
Up next for me and Aiden, we've got Oregon versus Akron, and for me, we've got Oregon versus Arizona. So what do you got here? This is my round.
I got Akron beating Oregon in this one. I think this is the one where Oregon gets checked up. I think Akron, if they're able to lay the shots down and show that their dominance in the paint, I do think Oregon's going to crumble a little bit. And I think Akron has the ability to take down Oregon in this one. So I got Akron moving on.
I do too. I think Oregon gets fraud checked here. I just think Arizona, when Oregon comes up against decent teams, I just think it all falls apart. Like, I feel like, the same accusations that people throw at UNC, like they fall apart in the big games. And I know that the quad one record for Oregon doesn't suggest that, but in a lot of the must win games, they have not been great. And every single game in March is a must win game. And they have not had a great track record though. So I have got Arizona beating Oregon in that round.
And also, isn't most of Oregon's quad one wins at home, where you're in a stacked, like in a Big Ten that is at sometimes overinflated in the rankings. So I would like to check the quality of those wins, in my opinion. Just with how much I've been watching Oregon, I'm just not necessarily sold on them as much as a
And
lot
I
of other
think
people are.
the majority happened in the early season too, as well. So
Yeah.
moving on, this is an interesting matchup. This will be one that I'll be really happy to watch if it pops up. We've got BYU and Wisconsin. So what are your initial thoughts on this? This will be another one where if I'm not at work, I'm definitely tuning into this one.
I'm definitely tuning in, but I'm not going to lie. I don't think it's close. I think Wisconsin takes BYU handedly in this one. I just think they are overall the much more solid team. I think, though the Big Ten is a little bit overinflated in rankings, I do believe that Wisconsin just has a better standing in the Big Ten than BYU does in the Big 12, and I think that speaks volumes. I got Wisconsin winning this one.
I do as well. Wisconsin, they've got a lot of notable results. They're just really good. They got a really good win over Michigan State in the conference tournament. They've got decent wins over Purdue. They split with Illinois, and then they've got a really good 15-point win over Arizona. And yes, both teams have actually played Arizona. BYU split with them. BYU got blown out, and then they won by one. But ultimately, like you said, I think Wisconsin's just playing really good basketball right now. I think John Toji and John Blackwell will just be too much. They're both players where you can get 15 to 20 points out of them, about 5 rebounds, and they also garner about 2 assists a game. That's when you've got kind of that double-edged sword there for you. I think when you've got 2 guys, even sometimes 3 guys who can go for 15 to 20 points a night, you're going to have a winning recipe, because then you're kind of like role players are going to kind of fill in the gaps there. So I think Wisconsin's just a well-rounded team. So I've got Wisconsin there as well. Up next, we've either got, for you, Aiden, we've got a matchup of SEC foes, and for me, we've got a matchup between St. Mary's and Alabama. So take it away.
I picked St. Mary's.
Oh yeah, you picked St. Mary's. My bad. So we've got St. Mary's versus Bama. I'm not sure what way. Oh, you got Bama?
I got Bama.
I would love to say I have Bama, but unfortunately, I think this is one of the few upsets I'm going to go with in this quadrant of the bracket. I don't think there's going to be many upsets in the East, but I think this is going to be one of them. For me, like I said, St. Mary's is one of those teams where even if you adjust for strength of schedule, they've got one of the best defenses in Division I. They currently have the 8th best defense. Yes, I know Alabama is one of the best offenses right now. Alabama currently sitting at, let me look where is Alabama in these rankings? I can't find them. Alabama's the number 4 offense. Really, really, really solid defensively as well. They allow less than 1 point per possession, similar to Mount St. Mary's. But I've just got a feeling, and after watching some of Alabama's games, and I've mentioned this already before, they kind of play too fast for their own good sometimes. Like, for them to be efficient, I think, they can still play fast. They are the fastest team in the tournament. They average 75 possessions, 75 and a half possessions per game. And for me, that's 75 possessions per 40 minutes. Let me do some quick math here. 75.5 divided by 40. 75.5 divided by 40. That is, they get in almost 2 possessions per minute. 2 possessions per minute. And this is where I think their stats of the offensive efficiency can kind of get overinflated. Is when you have that many possessions per minute and you have a lot of possessions, that's ultimately going to increase your scoring chances. And it can, in some cases, overinflate your efficiency, which this is another thing that people brought up with the net is so a lot of times the efficiency rating isn't adjusted for strength of schedule sometimes. And with the metrics that the tournament is using, I've got the adjusted metrics. I like to look at the adjusted ones. But when it's not adjusted for strength of schedule, Alabama's resume it's still they've still got great wins, but like their efficiency when you adjust it is not there. I mean, yes, when they're hot, they're one of the best teams in the country, but that's March Madness. When honestly anyone under a 10 seed or under is hot, they can be the best team in the country. That's the nature. That's the very nature of this tournament. But for me, I just think Alabama's a little too inconsistent. St. Mary's has got the consistency going for them. I know they didn't win the WCC, but they were on kind of a tear there. I think they have the ability to turn it on with how good their defense is. So I have got St. Mary's over Alabama. So I'm on eraser. There we go. St. Mary's / Alabama. All right. Moving on to the Sweet 16. We've got Duke versus Akron and Duke versus Arizona. So I'll let you take it away with Duke versus Akron.
Duke versus Akron. I got Duke winning this one. I think I see Duke having a pretty easy path to the Elite Eight, and I have them beating Akron. Like I do think Akron has the capability to make a good run, but regardless, whether Duke's going up against Oregon, Liberty, Arizona, or Akron, I just think they have everything that it takes to make it to the Elite Eight. I have them winning this one.
Yeah, same here. I've got Duke over Arizona. Arizona, good team, but honestly, Duke could be an argument for being the number one overall seed. But honestly, they lucked out not being the number one overall seed, getting to play in Raleigh. So for me, I've got Duke here. They're just such an all-around good team, and at this point, Cooper Flagg will likely be back and in decent shape. He'll have another week or two under his belt to kind of get back on his feet. So I've got Duke in this one. Our other Sweet 16 matchup, we've got Wisconsin versus Bama and Wisconsin versus St. Mary's. Who do you got here?
In Wisconsin versus Bama, I have Wisconsin winning this one. I think they take down Alabama. I think this is where we see the inconsistencies of Alabama really start to show. These are the inconsistencies that we've seen when they played Auburn, Tennessee, Florida. Just when they kind of get a little bit out physical and a little bit outpaced. And I just see Wisconsin. I know they lost the Big Ten. I just see them making a pretty solid run in this tournament. And I think they're a better team than Alabama.
I've got the same reasoning for St. Mary's. I think this is where their kind of little run runs out here. Like Wisconsin, I know they lost to Michigan. They're one of the hottest teams in the country right now. They're physical, they play fast, but they're also efficient when they play fast, which is something that Alabama isn't always when they're fast. Yes, Alabama is one of the more efficient teams in the nation, but when they get going fast, sometimes they can be a little too fast for their own good. Wisconsin plays about that and doesn't play the same style, but Wisconsin plays about the same pace as St. John's. They're about as efficient. And with they're in that kind of that sweet spot where they're not too fast, they're not too slow, but they're just right, and they're very efficient when they do it. They're one of the most efficient teams. So for me, I've got Wisconsin. Rounding that out in our Elite Eight, that means we will have Duke and Wisconsin in the Eastern Finals. Who do you got here?
This is one where I'm pretty split on. I do like Wisconsin a lot, and I was about to pick them to go over Duke, but I just think Duke's too strong on all facets. And just the offensive and defensive play of Duke, I think is going to be a match, like too much for Wisconsin, and I just see them being outpaced by Duke and Duke coming away with it.
Yeah, I agree. Duke's just got too much quality, and when it comes to like the trends we've seen of the past national champions, Duke actually matches the most out of them out of any of the other one seeds. So if any history, analytics, everything kind of points towards Duke being in the Finals Four. So I'm gonna have to agree with you. They shoot really well from three. They're the most efficient team, and usually the most efficient team's up there. They're number one in the net. They were in the Week 6 top 12 AP poll. They're in the KenPom top 40, KenPom top 20 defenses. They are similar to Florida. They are like genetically built like a national champion this year. So I've got Duke. So moving on to the Midwest and final region here. Starting off, we have got the University of Houston versus Southern Illinois, Edwardsville.
Houston.
Houston, yeah, I don't think we need to.
I'm not that impressed by it. Like I actually took the incentive to try to watch a lot of the mid-major championships. I saw Southern Illinois. I really wasn't that impressed. I got to go with Houston.
I do as well. Up next, we've got a trendy, if you will, upset pick, but I honestly don't say the upset. And I know this is going to piss a lot of SEC fans off. I've got Gonzaga. Georgia's another one of those teams where I don't think they deserve to be anywhere near the tournament after their conference record. Yes, their conference record was a fair bit better than Oklahoma and Texas, but they were still like 8-9, or they were still like 8-10, which I think you can kind of excuse, but I don't think they won the games they needed to win in the SEC tournament to get in. So for me, Gonzaga, they're just a better team. They figured it out in the end. Yes, they kind of slid. St. Mary's kind of had them figured out mid regular season, but then we got to the WCC tournament, the end of WCC regular season play, and Gonzaga just started to figure it out. They got hot. They're on a run right now. They're the most efficient mid-major seed in recent memory. They play fast, but not too fast for themselves. So they stay just within their bounds. They kind of know their limits. So for me, I've got Gonzaga here.
Yeah, the thing was with me with Gonzaga, they lost a lot of games that I think Gonzaga's of past would have won, but they've lost them very close. Like none of the games got away from them, and I feel like Georgia, it's very easy for them to either put it on or have the game get away from them. And if Gonzaga is just able to kind of keep the pace with Georgia, I do see Georgia gassing out and Gonzaga pulling away with this one.
Yep, we got Gonzaga in that one. Hold on, my thing is acting up. It's okay. We'll just roll with it. Zag. Up next, we've got Clemson versus McNeese. McNeese, the current home of the prospective NC State coach. Clemson, Brad Brownell, the job that allegedly Will Wade wants because he went to Clemson, he's a grad student there, learned to coach there. I've got Clemson here. I think they're too good. Brad Brownell's got this team coached up. This team's coming back with a vengeance after how last year went and their exit in the Elite Eight. So for me, I've got Clemson here out for vengeance.
Yeah, I think this McNeese team is really solid, and a lot of part of me was saying Clemson needs to be on upset alert, but I just think Clemson's too solid overall. And I think they're going to handily get this one.
Yeah, and the interesting thing here is McNeese has a former Providence player named Alan Breed who will be making his return to the Dunkin' Donuts Center. But, he doesn't have a great record with shooting in the city of Rhode Island, if you know what I mean. So I've got the Clemson Tigers here. Up next, we've got – he was dismissed from the team, if you couldn't tell. Up next, we've got Purdue versus High Point. This has been a trendy upset pick between Purdue and High Point. Purdue, obviously, not the team they've been in past years, but if I'm being honest, I don't see it. I don't see the UNCW. I can see the magic. High Point, I know it's their first tournament. They've got nothing to lose. But for what it's worth, I think this Purdue team is going to have enough to get past High Point.
When it comes to High Point, like I was a pretty big High Point homer at the beginning of the season, but just seeing them kind of lose games that I thought they should have won. Granted, they were close ones, but against like UNC Greensboro, UNC Asheville, I have questions about this High Point team. But I do acknowledge that Purdue is a little bit having a little bit of an off year, having some like pretty tough losses against like teams like Wisconsin, Michigan State, Illinois. I still got to go with Purdue on this one. I just don't see the that I don't see any like High Point magic right now. Hey guys, sorry, we just kind of ran into some technical difficulties midway through us doing the brackets. The computer just went out, and unfortunately, our visual just got erased. But don't worry, I have everything saved on my computer, so we have all the results that we've predicted so far saved onto my computer right now, but you're not going to be able to see it right now. But right after us talking about Purdue and High Point, we're now moving into Illinois versus the team that beat Texas, Xavier. Xavier just getting that very close, that good win against Texas. And Xavier is looking pretty hot right now. And they're going to be going up against Illinois. Honestly, like in this matchup with like how Big East play has been for them, with them kind of making a little bit of comeback. I know Gareth and I both have them beating Illinois. Gareth, did you want to expand on any of that?
Yeah, I just think Illinois has been up and down. They're not the team that everyone kind of thinks they are. I'm not saying they're not good, and I'm not saying they're not worthy of being in the tournament, but I think a 6 seed's a little high. I just think Xavier's got the pieces. Xavier has the wins. They've got the resume, and just with generally how they play, I think Xavier's the better overall team. I think Illinois just kind of was able to skirt by on just being, in the Big Ten. And for me, ultimately, this Xavier team, they're able to get it done when it matters. They've got wins over UConn. I think they even have stolen a few over Creighton.
Mm.
So for me, I just got Xavier in this one. And I think, and no offense to Illinois, but I just think Xavier's the better team.
That moves us on to Kentucky versus Troy. With the memes of like Kentucky losing to a 14th seed going on, I know this is going to be a game of narratives. But just looking at Troy right now, I just don't like their resume as much. And I just feel like this Kentucky team has all the intangibles and all the assets uh, to to get this one. So I got Kentucky moving on to the round of 32.
I do as well. It may be a little close. Kentucky fans may be sweating, but I think this is going to be a name where they crush that narrative that, losing to the low seed in the first round. So, like you said, big narrative game. So,
After that, we have UCLA versus Utah State. This is one that I know Gareth and I both have like differing opinions on. Uh, UCLA, in my opinion, like yes, they've been up, they've been down. I still think they just have the overall better team. Really have done well in Big Ten play, and haven't. There were times where they weren't really able to adapt, but there were times where they took on teams like Michigan State and beat them. They beat Gonzaga. I feel like these are really impressive wins, and though they've had like some pretty bad losses, like to Illinois and UNC, I have them beating Utah State. But Gareth, I know you had a difference of opinion.
yeah, for me, I've got Utah State. I mean, I feel like they are the slightly better team. UCLA, they do have some good early season wins, but I think both of these teams, they're kind of in that spot where they both have those good early season wins. UCLA has some decent conference wins, but ultimately, I've got Utah State. I just think they're the more Them and UCLA are similar in terms of their efficiency. They're similar in terms of like they're very similar teams on paper, if you know what I mean. Let me pull this up real quick. Control F. Okay. Utah State is one of the better offenses in the nation. They score about 1.2 points per possession, and then they allow are just around a little over 1 point per possession. So not too terribly bad. They're very sound offensively and defensively. UCLA, on the other hand, they're more of a defensively minded team, but they allow less than 1 point per possession, but they're not as efficient on the offensive, and they only get 1.1 points per possession. So in this kind of scenario in March Madness, I'm usually I'm usually a bigger fan of the more defensive teams. But just looking at all the metrics this year, um, and just Utah State plays slightly faster, and usually when the more offensively minded team plays a little faster than the more defensively minded team, that usually tilts the scales in their favor. So that's why I've got Utah State in this one.
That moves us to Tennessee versus Wofford. I got Tennessee on this one. Enough said.
Yeah, same here. I got Tennessee as well. So enough said.
All right, moving up to the round of 32, we got Houston versus Gonzaga. I was a little bit disappointed. I didn't have an 8 or 9 seed beating a 1 seed, but I was thinking of pulling the trigger on Gonzaga, but I can't do that with this Houston team. This Houston team, uh, they're just are able to fire on all cylinders, but just their ability to like slow the game down and kind of play the game on their terms is something that I think is really uh, like something that they're going to use to their advantage. So I got Houston winning this one.
I do as well, and that's just one thing I like about Houston. They're a defensively minded team. You know, similar to St. John's, they're like every 50-year-old's wet dream when it comes to college basketball. They control the tempo. They really kind of control their own destiny when it comes to games. So that's why I've got Houston in this one as well.
That brings us to Clemson versus Purdue. I got Clemson winning this one in a big one. I just feel like this Clemson team is hot. I feel like they've been tested, and I just feel like the same, like these teams are kind of, I'd say, a little bit in the same position of their own respective conference, if that makes sense. Like Purdue is kind of the like top tier, but not completely on top of the Big Ten. And Clemson is a top tier, but not completely on top of the ACC. But I feel like the pressure that has made Clemson great is the type of pressure that makes Purdue crumble, in my opinion. And that's why I have Clemson being able to, I have Clemson winning this one against Purdue.
If you look at it from a metric standpoint, Clemson and Purdue are almost identical in terms of pace and efficiency. But like Aiden said, I'm going to give Clemson the edge here. They're more battle tested. We've mentioned this kind of before in the podcast. They've kind of got that tryout. They've got resume. They've known loss. They've known adversity, and then they're hot as well. They're hot right now. The only thing that stopped them from making it to an ACC championship game was a pretty questionable call on the lane by TV Teddy, who all ACC fans are not too terribly fond of. So I got Clemson in this one. They're out. They've got something to prove. They're angry. They wanted that ACC title. They've known loss. They've got everything. They've got the makings of a team of a. They've got the makings of a solid seed, not a low seed, not a high seed, but of a solid seed that's ready to make a deep run. So that's why I've got Clemson in this one.
After that, we have Xavier versus Kentucky on this one. This is where I kind of see Kentucky starting to fall apart right here, and I feel like this Xavier team is going to be getting hot right here. Um, with Kentucky, I feel like the thing that's going to be getting them right here is just the fact that this is going to be like this whole tournament is going to be a battle of narratives right now. You got rid of your guy Calipari, and because you just inability to like make big runs in the NCAA tournament that you were happy with. Yeah, he got you guys championships, but it was clear the reading of the tea leaves as it was said, that it was time for a changing of the guard. But with this new coach and just like this new system and like this Kentucky team, like they've been a little bit hot and cold in my opinion. I feel like this is just the prime time for an Xavier team to take advantage of it and make a little run for themselves. So I got Xavier beating Kentucky.
I do as well. Mark Pope is a good coach. I like Mark Pope. He's good. He's had, I'd say, successful um, first season with Kentucky. I know he was initially, excuse me, sorry, I'm blanking on this. I know he was the BYU head coach for the longest time, and I'd say he's a well seasoned head coach. He's been an assistant at Georgia, assistant at Wake. BYU assistant was at Utah Valley, then went to BYU, and now is back in Kentucky. But I just think that Sean Miller, he's been around for a while. This Xavier team, they're kind of on a little bit of a run. They kind of got a little hot there. Yes, did they? I believe. Wait, Xavier did lose to Marquette, but it was in very heartbreaking fashion. They were able to take a very good Marquette team to the brink. But like I said, I think this Kentucky, its first year head coach, Kentucky's one of those schools where you have a lot of ones and dones, and they don't have a lot of experience when it comes to those high pressure situations. So I'm gonna tip the favor here to the Xavier Musketeers.
Then after that, we have a little bit of a split. So you have Utah State versus Tennessee. I got UCLA versus Tennessee. I believe our end result is the same. I got Tennessee winning this one. I just feel like though they've had like their ups and downs, I like their run that they made in the SEC tournament. They granted they didn't get the job done against Florida, but I've just liked their ability to really kind of come back from like their setbacks that they've had. And I just feel like overall they're just a more solid team than UCLA. So I got Tennessee moving on.
I do as well. There's just a lot of quality there. They're battle tested. Yes, they've been inconsistent. They've had their inconsistencies, but I think they've got a lot of skill. They've got the skill. They've got the playing style. They've got the coaching and Rick Barnes to help them get through. So I've got Tennessee here.
Alrighty. So then with that, we have our matchup of Houston and Clemson in the Sweet 16. Uh, this is one that I was kind of going back and forth on, but in my opinion, I know Houston is the better team on paper. They've had a lot of good wins in the Big 12, but you see, my thing is where they've had inconsistencies was sometimes a little bit out of conference play earlier in the season, and usually I don't hold that against you. But like my thing with Clemson is the fact that uh, they're a team with heart, and they're a team that has been tested. And I don't think there's been a team that has been tested the way Clemson has. And I'll take the team that has been tested and molded through pressure over the team that's better on paper. Am I saying that Houston has never faced pressure? Absolutely not. But I don't think they've faced the type of adversity that Clemson has. You had Duke get away from you. You had like all these events in the ACC tournament go against you. I gotta say, like, I like this Clemson team. I like its grit, and I feel like they can like upset Houston and take this one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this Houston team at times, like, I love like that they're plotting. I love that they kind of have this in an era of college basketball where it's all about speed and you know everyone thinks it's pace of play that wins games. Alabama, your Alabamas, your Kentuckys, your Floridas, they just play at absolute warp speed. That's what wins games. No, I like the kind of the mentality. We want to be selective about our shots. We want to play the right way. Clemson is not quite that. Doesn't play as slow of a pace as Houston. Like you said, they're battle tested. Thing is, they can up the tempo when they need to. Clemson or Houston, it seems like they run into trouble where they get into a shooting match with the team, or they get into a pissing contest, and that's not what Houston wants. So Clemson, I think they've got that upside where if they need to get into a shootout or a pissing contest with the team, they can. They're like you said, they're also battle tested. They've seen adversity, and that's just more reasons why I'm going to go for Clemson. I just think that they can run with teams if they need to. So I've got Clemson.
Alrighty, and then with that we have Xavier versus Tennessee. I have the Xavier train stopping here. I got Tennessee winning this one. I think at this point Xavier's exhausted. I think Tennessee can really take advantage of it, and they got the physicality and just really the uh, like all the aspects of the ball. They got the offense and the defense to really kind of like have their way with Xavier, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely feel. I think this is where Xavier runs out of gas, and as unfortunate as to say that, but I just think that's what's going to happen. Like I said, quality, the pace of Tennessee, I think is just going to prove too much for them. So I've got Tennessee in this.
And that leads us to our Elite Eight to decide the Midwest bracket. We got Clemson versus Tennessee in the Battle of Oranges right here. I think it's going to be Clemson gassing out right here. Like after an emotional win of Houston, like this is where I think Clemson plateaus. And we've seen it before. I think Tennessee is going to take this one, and in a close, hard-fought one. But I just see Tennessee taking this one in its path to the Final Four.
Yeah, I've got Tennessee as well. I think Tennessee is a little more tested than Clemson. They have a little bit more of that explosive upside while maintaining that defensive structure, that sound defense. They still have a really decent defense, like I said earlier. So I just think they've just got a little bit of edge. I think it'll be an entertaining game, and it'll be I think no one's gonna there won't be any questions about Clemson. I just think it's that Tennessee's that much better. So I've got Tennessee.
Alrighty. So that's going to bring us to our Final Four predictions. For Garrett's Final Four, he has Michigan State versus St. John's and Duke versus Tennessee. I have Auburn and St. John's and Duke versus Tennessee. Garrett, do you want to give your breakdown for Michigan State versus St. John's? How you think that's going?
Yeah, Michigan State, St. John's. I think this is everyone's. This is going to be peak basketball. Izzo versus Rick Pitino. Both teams have very good, decent resumes. They don't have world-beating resumes like I think it is in the SEC, but I think the SEC is overinflated. I think these are two teams that play an old school style of basketball. They played as some people would say, the right way. I think ultimately what it's going to come down to is I think it's going to come down to who's going to be able to get it done. St. John's, unfortunately, I like St. John's. I like how they play, but St. John's really struggles from the three-point line. And I know, like I said, this is the year where trends are going to be broken. But I think, yeah, I've got Michigan State in this. I just think Michigan State is the better team here. Not necessarily the better team, but I think they're able to shoot the three more. And I think just that being able to have that extra level of consistency is going to help them kind of, push them over the line. So I've got Michigan State in this one.
Alrighty. In my matchup between Auburn and St. John's, I feel like a madman doing this, but I don't know. I just see St. John's, and I feel like they're going up against Goliath in this one. St. John's, they've had a lot of adversity before, but this is going to be their toughest match, and I think they're going to rise to the occasion for it. I think they're going to take down Auburn, and I think they're going to go to the national championship. I have St. John's stopping Auburn from reaching to that Final Four. I feel like that. I just see the cards aligning for St. John's to make it to the championship. So I got them winning. We both have Duke versus Tennessee. I got Duke beating Tennessee. I don't know who you got.
I do as well. I just think I just think Duke's the better team. They're more tested, especially if Cooper Flag's back and healthy. Duke, they've got the players. Shire, I think he's finally got what he wants going on at Duke the way he wants it. He's kind of got the full transfer of power from him to Krzyzewski. I think Duke's finally starting to figure things out. I think this is where Duke will get their first trip to the national championship under John Shire. So I've got Duke.
Yeah, I got Duke as well. I got Duke beating Tennessee. I just feel like the path for towards the championship for Duke is going to provide a lot of leeway for Cooper Flag to get better, and then when they start getting tested, that's when they're going to start really hitting their stride. And I feel like once they start hitting their stride, they're going to really take care of teams like Wisconsin and Tennessee, and I see them going to the championship game. And in my championship matchup between Duke and St. John's, I got Duke winning that one.
Yeah, I've also got Duke winning in the national championship. I've got Duke beating Michigan State 70-66 in the national championship for Duke to win. So that is who I have in the national championship.
Yeah, and I guess if I got to give a score for Duke and St. John's, I'll give 75 to 69 in favor of Duke.
Sounds good. Definitely a solid bracket. I would
I
love for St.
can't wait to see it all just get absolutely dismantled in like one day.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the fucking. Every time I've chosen Duke as my national champion, they've gotten fucking bounced. Although last year, I will say, Aiden, I think you should make a bracket going with just what you want to happen because
Yeah.
I got in the top 1% of brackets last year because I had NC State in the Final Four just for shits and gigs. I was in the Aiden. I had the number 111th bracket in the challenge for a while there. I mean, after the loss, I still stayed in the top 1% because my Final Four had UConn and NC State and Purdue in it. But obviously, NC State lost Purdue. But I just had NC State winning for shits and gigs. So
Yeah.
also, you never know. Place $100 bet on UNC to be national champion. Had I, placed a bet for a joke, I jokingly was thinking about placing a bet on NC State last year to win the ACC championship. I'd be $350,000 richer. And if I
I don't
reinvested that to the Final Four, I'd be like a millionaire.
I don't have that type of money to throw 100 around, but we'll see. We'll see. But I think that's gonna wrap it up for us today.
Definitely, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen because it's tanking my frame rate.
Yeah.
But no, thank you guys for listening in to our tournament special. I'm sure we'll do some highlights where we think the tournament's going to go after we get a few games under our belt. Yeah, but no, thank you for listening in and have fun filling out your brackets. I know Aiden and I will keep you up to date on ours. Aiden and I next episode might showcase some of our other brackets, what we want to happen, our fun bracket, when we go by color, throwing a dildo at a wall, flipping a penny.
I'm actually after this, I'm going to be asking ChatGPT to fill out a bracket.
Okay, I like that. I like that. We can highlight that on the next episode as well.
Yeah. My goal is I want to beat ChatGPT.
I think that's a good goal.
Yeah.
We could do a section next time on ChatGPT versus TBRA.
That'd be interesting. That'd be interesting. I'm really excited for it. It's one of the sports fans' favorite time of the year right now. We got March Madness, and coming up in a couple weeks, we got another UFC match coming up. UFC 314, and we also got the Masters coming up. There might be a little bit of a Masters segment in a future Tobacco Road and Abroad video, so I'm excited for that. It's a great time to be a sports fan right now. But go out there, fill out your brackets, fill them out for fun. Just it's a great time. It's a great time to be a sports fan right now.
It is, and with that being said, we may even do some MLB episodes. I've been trying to get into that as well. just for an opening day, not like religiously follow it like we do college basketball, college baseball, and other stuff, but maybe some kind of big name stuff. That stuff happens, but we want to thank you guys for listening in this week. We'll probably be back with a lot more tournament stuff next week. So thank you guys for listening in. We really appreciate it, and we will see you all next week.